Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this pre-event of the Public Value Festival. At the moment, it is the Public Value Festival 2021. We would like to have it started in 2020, but due to COVID, we had to postpone it twice. And as it seems right now, we probably will also have to postpone the July conference. But as Timo so great said, we postpone it till the virus, we survive the virus. So we'll wait and the event will come. A small introduction from my side. My name is Gerrit Nijeboer. I'm from the Netherlands, working at Dexen and Rolsbach in The Hague. And my connection to public value started in Portugal with a case study we did in Barreiro next to Lisbon. And during that trip, I met Louis Newton, who's the president of the Estrela Borough. And after that, I got in touch.
We didn't meet in Barreiro.
We didn't meet in Barreiro. No, it was at the Dutch ambassador, if I'm correct. We had lunch there. And afterwards, I also got in touch with Timo Meinhardt because the topic of public value really grabbed me. I tried to specialize myself in that, and I remember that in November 2018, Louis, Timo, and myself met in Vienna at the Global Peter Drucker Forum. And during an hour, we got in touch with each other and discussed how we were able to spread the word or the gospel of public value. Louis was very eager to do that in Portugal, in Lisbon. Well, I understand why, because it's a beautiful city. And while we ate a bar of Tony Chocoloni, we had the idea of, organizing a public value festival. It's the first European public festival. So as Zhao already said, it's part of history. Not sure if there has been a global festival already. But the idea is to bring together scientists and practitioners and have a festival instead of an event. I think that's enough for me. We have a few very interesting speakers or people on our panel. Professor Timo Meinhardt, Professor João Simaro, and President Louis Newton. And I will give them some time to introduce themselves. And after that, we have a discussion. I have some questions prepared, but we are also very open to have some questions from the audience. So please feel free to chat. We have Liliana sitting ready to collect the questions, and hopefully we are able to answer them. Timo, may I start with you for a short introduction? Each one of you has around 5 minutes to introduce themselves.
Okay, thank you. Hello to everybody. Hello to this distinguished audience. I feel enthusiastic that we make it happen anyway today with this pre-event. And I like to take the chance to say a word where I come from and say a word about this framing of the public value for this festival. As I see it, being trained as a psychologist early on, I felt it must be something in our world which has to be reconsidered in terms of what people not just live in, but what they perceive of institutions. And this public value research kicked off more than 10 years ago, at least when I came into touch with Mark Moore's work from Harvard Kennedy School, who promised to also contribute to this festival via online contribution. Hopefully he will make it happen. And since then, I have been in this community and space of working on about public value issues, be it public value atlas, public value scorecard, and trying to take the construct from the public administration, where it actually stems from, towards other sectors, business, startups, not just public administration, where it actually started off. And my main idea, my main point is to connect public value thinking as of initiated by this famous book by Mark Moore, by arguing that public value is a way to articulate, to come back to what we came to call in Europe in our history, the common good, and relating this idea that public value is the companies and organizations, the administrations, NGOs contribution to the common good, since a couple of years keeps me awake at night and day, and together with my colleagues and team at Leipzig Credit School of Management, we work on different areas to try to make this construct operationalized, to take it to the practice sphere, to make it philosophically sound. Lots of things to do, and my wish is to contribute to this festival by introducing more of our work to you, make friends, make connections in this network of people between politics, science, maybe consulting, to help this concept to flourish, and in a way to also achieve an understanding what research question might be for us. We have to solve in academia, but also always to keep this eye on the relevance of academic research. So the construct itself lends to a complexity of issues, and our focus at Leipzig Credit School is a psychological one. More or less the whole team is consisting of psychologists. Therefore, we are not economists, and you will see in our arguments, this is the main focus. And I should stop here, I guess, with this short introduction, and Herwin, for the content part, there will be another next round, but I hand back first to Herwin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Timo, for this introduction. Professor Zhao, may I give the microphone to you?
Okay, thank you, Gary. I have a small presentation. I don't know if you are going to use it in this round or in the next one.
You could share your screen. I don't have the presentation here, so
I have 5 minutes, so I have some ideas I would like to share now, and then, of course, in the question part we can address everything else. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm not able to share my screen. Can please, Liliana, can you help me? Okay. I don't know if you can all see now.
We only see you, Zhao.
Ah, okay.
Come, there's the screen sharing.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, to me it's visible.
Okay. So, sorry. So, first of all, let me start by a small presentation. My name is João Simão. I'm a communication professor at the Universidade Católica Portuguesa in Lisbon. And first of all, I'd like to start by saying that it's an honor for me and for Universidade Católica to be part of this process and to host our festival, hopefully in July. We don't know 100% for sure yet. But let me start by saying that I'm also honored to share this online stage with Professor Timo Meinhardt, one of Public Value's celebrities. I think all of us recognize his role on public value and his contributions. And again, it's an honor to have you, and it will be a greater honor to welcome you in Lisbon. And also share this stage with President Newton, sorry, because, and this is a battle I'm dealing in my academic career. It's important for politicians to fully understand how some realities may help them. And I think President Newton fully understands it. So thank you all for being part of this. Now I would like in 3-4 minutes to show you some big ideas about what I think it's important today. So I'm going to focus in the second part of this question. Why does it matter for all of us? Why public value matter for all of us? And here today I brought you some thoughts I'm going to share with you based upon our festival motto, connect, contribute, and celebrate. Can you see the second slide?
Yes.
Okay, so I started with connect, and I started with this big idea, public value as a common goal. Because as Professor Timo Meinhardt already wrote and said many times, we are talking about a common language. We are talking about a unifying language. And I think that public value can be an answer to better understand some crisis and this vulnerability we are all facing today, especially for different organizations. Even more because today we are changing our basics, especially in the last year, and also because today we see different people, different associations trying to reconnect with reality. That's why I see public value as a key issue, not only for decision makers, but also to civil society. That's why I wrote there civil society. And this, for me, is connected to our main idea. That is, if we are talking about civil society, we must address this idea, how to manage and understand different issues. And here we can talk about different issues, different interests. I'm from communication studies, especially political communication, strategic communication. And in communication, we talk a lot about issues management and how to strategically address different issues, different opinions through communications. And sometimes I think it's exactly this. I think we can see public value, as I said, and as Professor Timo also said many times, an unifying language between different parties, between different ideas. It's important to share what we really think it's important for our society. And that's why we have this word, contribute, the second word of our festival. And then my big last idea, the celebrant part, my final idea, I mean, is why celebrate public value in culture? And the answer is quite simple. I'm not a public value expert. And in our country, there has been some difficulties in producing a lot of scientific knowledge on this topic. And I think this festival is an important step to change this. And also an important step for any university, especially my university, Universidade Católica, because we see this topic as something that will grow even more in our language, that will grow even more in our actions, especially in these difficult times. That's why it's important for us to have a festival not only focused on the academic part, but also to bring different kind of experts, and especially to have politicians with us to celebrate, to first connect, then contribute, and then celebrate all these things. So this was my first big ideas I wanted to share with you today. Again, thank you all for being here. I hope to see you all at Universidade Católica in our festival next July or in another date. And then I will be answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, João, also for your enthusiasm. And well, like you said, hopefully in Lisbon and hopefully at Católica to meet in real life. From two academics, we make the shift to Louis. Louis, may I give you the microphone and please introduce yourself.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Herman. I also have a small presentation to deliver today. I'm going to share with everybody.
You have 5 minutes, Louis.
You're saying that because I'm a politician, right? Well, first and foremost, good evening to everybody. My name is Luís Newton, and I've been elected as Estrela Borough's president in 2017. Today, I'll share with you my vision of what public value means to me and why it matters for all of us. And I will be sharing the example of Estrela. It's easy to say that public value is everything. It's an abstract concept for those who take the first contact with it. From Professor Stimo's presentation, we now have a clearer vision of it and how it foresees its development. And I want to talk about sustainability and policy making. Where can we find public value? Mostly my approach is in the role of policymakers. The first question to all of us is if sustainability is a part of public value, or is public value a part of sustainability? Almost like the chicken and the egg dilemma. It's easy to find arguments for both points of views. For me, sustainability isn't a barrier for public value, but a way of developing ideas and policies that help create public value for the community. And we all know that by 2050, 68% of the world's population will be living in cities. So our vision of our cities' necessities must be adapted to this. Sustainability is a gateway for new procedures that create new value chains. And that's the key for breaking the old concepts and bring innovation with public value creation embedded and make it part of our daily life. In Estrela, I've learned that policymakers need to adapt to these new challenges and uphold public value as the mean to an end. And they must do so through policies and tools that promote citizen engagement. I want to make something clear. A public servant's job is to take notice and engage with the stakeholders in its territories, all of them. Therefore, a public servant should uphold public value. Traditionally, for the sake of public management, there are those who envision a separate perspective of all stakeholders. Although we can look at it through the lenses of management efficiency, addressing separately what are in fact common issues, throws the buzz on people's expectations, diminishing their will to engage on the quest to a better solution. The reality is when a policymaker doesn't have the ability to see the bigger picture and pursues a strictly separate solution, he or she will never be able to fully understand what public value can add to their vision. Although it is essential to address each stakeholder, one can never sever the interconnectivity between them. From those interactions, we can achieve citizen engagement, an essential part of public value in policymaking. We can say and act upon what people value, what companies can offer, what is needed from us to conduct policies that are important and effective, and more. Our stakeholders establish the priorities for their own agenda, so we can adapt our policy making accordingly, as such citizen management itself. In Estrela Borough, we started the creation of digital tools to allow us to act upon what people really identified as a priority. And And how? Well, initially we developed GeoStrela, which is a digital platform that allowed citizen engagement with a simple picture reporting what was wrong. At the same time, our services were able to plan their operations, but we didn't stop in GeoStrela. With Chamulishu, you can activate trash removal services. You have an easy tool in your digital device, and our teams have optimized courses and automatic checklists through an AI algorithm. Estrela Participa was envisioned to address the population's projects and ideas for their own neighborhoods, promoting online voting for all who wish to take part in evaluating their neighbors' projects. And to show how versatile we should be, we also developed the Kit COVID-19 app that was built in a period where masks were not widely available or very expensive. With this solution, Estrela's residents could order a kit with several masks to protect the entire family. They were confined to their homes and afraid to come out because they didn't have a mask. Also, with this solution, we assured a no-waste policy because we only delivered to the ones that were really in need. And the truth is that from 2014 to 2018, we covered 35% of Estrela population. We have since grown to a database that represents almost 72% of all digital citizens in Estrela. And for a great surprise, our early adopters were mostly 55 plus, as we were expecting to reach first the younger ones. It's our ambition for the following years to continue to increase these numbers, and with this pandemic situation, we are getting more citizen engagement than ever, and we are developing new ways of getting the information to address people's needs. And well, what about the future? It's human nature to be ambitious. It's a public servant job to follow these needs and this evolution and develop adequate solutions. One's job never ends. It evolves constantly. If we are connected to public value, we will always be in the forefront, presenting what will be the adequate solution to each new challenges. So what is public value and why does it matter for all of us? Well, public value is interconnected with all of this. It presents even if we don't grasp it. Sometimes it's in the smaller things, sometimes in the bigger ones, more visible issues. Public value is a constant mission. I would like to thank you for your time, and I will be available to answer your questions, and I hope you feel as driven to public value as I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis.
Not 5 minutes, sorry.
No, I was on a point to cut you off, but it was a last slide. No, just kidding. Before we take any questions from our audience, I think one relevant question. Normally, if you see an academic conference or a meeting or event, it's always called a conference or an event or a gathering, but this is called a festival. Why do we call this a festival and not a conference or an event? Cheryl, could you explain this?
Yes, thank you, Gary. So first of all, I would like to point out that it's important for us academics in academia to promote different kinds of conferences and so on. So this is our daily basis. And since the beginning, since our first reunions about how we were going to put this into practice, we understand that this thing deserved a bit more than that. As I said earlier, we are talking about a concept, an issue that in Portugal we don't have a strong body of knowledge. We are talking about something that in Portugal, when we ask what is public value, most people don't know how to respond to that question. And so, since there are no big authors in Portugal about public value, we thought that this is a way to present the concept and other main players in a different manner. We want to do something that it's not just a small event. We want not only to do a conference, we want to create perhaps the first Portuguese public value network. And that's why our festival, and not conference, starts with Connect. And then, of course, I jump to the last word of our motto, which is celebrate. And this is actually what we really want to do, is celebrate what public value is and celebrate its importance, not only in Portugal, not only in different countries, but also to understand what different people from academia and not from academia, for instance, from from politicians, for instance, how can we see these concepts and what can we bring to discussion about these concepts? That's why we don't want a strictly academic event about this topic.
Thank you very much. Sounds great. Sounds clear. Another question for you, Timo. Well, the tagline is, what is public value and why does it matter for all of us? You mentioned that the concept of public value is already a few decades old. But, well, we were discussing this in 2018, but between 2018 and now, the world has changed, especially if you look at COVID-19. Well, how do you see the debate on the common good coming back? And what's the public value approach? Why is that a driving force of this? Could you explain that?
I mean, before the COVID crisis, we discussed public value or the common good as a notion of good life. As of today, we have at least to add this dimension or to see or uncarve the underlying dimension that the common good is also about to survive in the first place. How the collective survival is the enabling condition for individual freedom. It reminds us of, we might call, a primacy of the social, which is a thought very well known throughout our history, but we lost this thought. And I could say, Louis, it's politics stupid. It's politics at the end, because when Ronald Reagan kicked off and Margaret Thatcher kicked in to say the state is not part of the solution, it's part of the problem, Margaret Thatcher told us there is no such thing as society, only individuals and families. Again, it's politics. Last year in March, in self-chosen quarantine before he got infected, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, we could call him a promoter of our festival. I'm not ironic, but it's the irony of history that Boris Johnson was the one to say what this coronavirus already proved is there is such thing as society. And if the crisis only already shows one thing for our academic theorizing, is obviously there's a willingness to see something larger than individuals and families, a society, and we have to think at heart what it means, society, community, and so on and so forth. But to shift to a systemic viewpoint in a tradition of our common good thinking is something, again, which was kind of kicked off by politicians, not just Margaret Thatcher or Ronald Reagan, this time is Boris Johnson. And if this shift shows us good life depends on survival in the first place, we might discuss at the festival what this means for collaboration between state and business, for example, to fulfill this notion of public value, which is also an ethical notion, also an aesthetical notion of help the individual to flourish in community, which the latter part of the sentence, to flourish in community, was something we seem to be taken for granted in a postmodern lifestyle where everything is open, not just airports and restaurants, but where the individual can kind of develop goals and ideas and just to make one's own living. And now we discover that COVID-19 crisis in a most brutal way shows us that we depend on each other, are interconnected in a way which seems this generation to help for a collective learning leap other generations might have already had this experience after wars, for example. This generation, or our generation, has to relearn this, that there's a primacy of the social, and this is, Herman, to your question, at least to me currently, the first insight of this crisis, this interdependency, which is much bigger, deeper, and larger than we would have allowed ourselves to think of before the crisis.
Thank you. We have a question from John. He asks you, Timo, how do you think a protectionist economic approach post-COVID would affect the evolution of the concept of public value?
I might have to take a detour to answer or to reflect upon this question. First of all, at least in my thinking, and we might debate this, I never thought of public value as bound to democratic orders. Public value is a notion of the common good which is possible to achieve, to work for, which emerges in any societal order, not necessarily bound only to democracy, which is, by the way, a huge difference between the American literature on public value and maybe the European, if we might allow for this kind of a slight angle to emphasize the difference. And the protectionist view, or maybe this, even in a bigger picture, different societal orders might compete of who is better able to deliver public value. And at latest now, after COVID-19 crisis, we should get rid of the old 20th century dichotomies of state versus market. This is what Barry Bozeman in the US keeps trying us to communicate in his writings. It's about public value failure. Regardless who is the producer, we should not fight for or against state or market. We should fight for public value. Failure to overcome, and therefore the protectionist might be one way to deliver public value. I'm not saying I'm a relativist, but in a way a liberal regarding this idea of public value is what the public values, even if it hurts our feeling of notions of democratic ideas, which is not to imply to say that we should not strive for public value in democracy, but we should be aware of also other societal orders, including protectionist countries, might produce this, and there will be a new fight for public value achievements, not just bound to anti-protectionist economies or policies.
Thank you, Timo, for that answer. Meanwhile, the questions are starting to pile up in the chat, so I'll pick a few and ask them. There's a question from Carolina Lewis. How do you identify digital citizens in Estrella, and how do you think you could entice younger public to use your digital platforms?
Well, I would say that what we seek the most is citizen engagement, and citizen engagement means that we have to deliver. People have expectations when they install an app, and when those expectations can be higher if if the objective of that app is to in some way increase their quality of life. And if we do not deliver, they will abandon it. And I think that is our main challenge, is keeping high levels of response, and thus allowing people to keep their expectations level accomplished by our own services.
Thank you. I'm asking this to Timo or João. There's a question from Suresh, who asks, actually, isn't public value a modern day amped up incarnation of social justice, now coupled with possible sustainability? Is that a universal aesthetic one should orient oneself towards when discussing public value? I'm not sure if you're able also to read the question in the chat right now, perhaps. Otherwise, I will repeat it.
I'd like to answer, but if you would like to go first, please.
No, I was actually I was reading the question in the chat, and I was remember some weeks ago I was lecturing about how to manage a big event to my students. And I started my lecture with a PowerPoint with one slide only with a big question mark. And my idea, and that's what I intended to discuss with my students, is that this crisis, what we are living, make almost everything a big question. We don't know how things will play out tomorrow. We don't know how things will play out next week, especially in some areas. In that case, it was event management. So I would say, and I want to focus here in the word sustainability, because from communication point of view, and I'm from communication sciences, public interest is essential, especially in areas like corporate social responsibility, sustainability. And I think what lacks when we are talking about these concepts is to understand what is public value and how can we approach this concept to what we are trying to discuss. I was talking earlier on about issues management or public affairs, and sometimes we are lacking this other approach, especially in communication, to understand what is really important, especially today, especially in the times we are living today.
Thank you, Sharon.
May I also add to
of course, Timo. Yes, I was waiting for you, but go ahead.
To your question, I would kind of disagree with this notion that it's an incarnation of social justice. Yes, social justice can be part of. However, the whole idea is not, at least as I see it in the tradition of, let's say, John Rawls, the idea of theory of justice, because justice is about to raise claims. To my understanding, and you might have a different view, public value is about balance. Even the Chinese notion about balance and harmony, where claims as they appear in terms of justice problems or injustice problems are part of, there are also other collective values which determine our social bonds, our relationship, our associations. And when Mark Moore kicked off this idea of public value as something one needs an authorizing environment and to get support, we ask ourselves, is there a space within public value can exist in terms of what belongs to it next to justice? And I like your idea of aesthetics, which is often totally underestimated part of public value. And at St. Gallen in Leipzig, we came to conclude there might be a psychological theorizing which helps us to relate public value to basic human needs for self-regard, self-worth, for relationships, for positive experience and avoiding pain, and of course also for orientation and control. And only together all four basic needs form what we, at least we construct our public value atlas and public value scorecard in this way, see public value consisting of more than justice, including also other dimensions, which makes it a concept easy to travel, also to Asia. We just finished with colleagues from Kyoto University, Public Value Atlas in Japan, to keep the concept open for cultural context, for cultural sensitivity, and at the same time not being totally arbitrary. In other words, the basic needs form the basis for any value to emerge in any country, any history. And for example, the sustainability value is currently on our agenda. Of course, number one, it remains to be seen whether it will go away anyway. But historically, when you look back 40 years ago, this issue before the Club of Rome, before the Brundtland report, for example, was not on our agenda. Therefore, sustainability might be a current theme which is still contingent and might disappear, let's say, in 2050, when we have found solutions as civilizations to overcome these challenges. In other words, to put it bluntly, sustainability arrived, but public value is here to stay. In other words, there are different themes growing in and growing out into the public value narrative, and justice being one of them, very important one. And I might speculate that justice problems might be even in a more important way relevant after the crisis, because what the crisis also shows, if things break down social structures, economic structures, it bluntly shows us real injustice, and we will have also to relate our topic of public value to property rights. After the crisis, I predict public value might be an issue also for property structures, not just ecological or any other climate-related parts. They have a public way as a container to help us think beyond our own gardening, so to speak. It trains us in systemic thinking, and to make it not too broad in a way, bringing it back to the enabling conditions what makes people to flourish in community, which is of course more than justice, but includes justice as an essential part.
Thank you, Timo. I see there are also more questions coming in. I've got a question for Luis. I can't see from who it is, but the question is, Portugal went through an election act. How do you think the concept of public value could be made approachable to the common citizen in the context of an election campaign?
Well,
good question.
I would say that I would try to join that question with the question that that we have here also on the chat regarding politics and public value and decisions and public value and conflicts between decisions and the importance of public value. We should understand that first and foremost, public value is, we would say it's a bit like a tool to understand what people define as their own priorities. Public value does not make any kind of decisions. The decisions are up to us, politicians, and to others, not politicians, that use public value on a daily basis to comprehend the world around them. But public value doesn't enforce solutions. It offers enlightenment. And I think that is the main issue here. It's not the smoking gun. Public value doesn't bring I would say, the definitive answer. I mean, I'm a politician and I strive to be on top of my community's needs. And I think that public value represents a way to fully grasp the world around us and what people identify as their own priorities. And politicians should at least respond to people's priorities. And in this pandemic period, I would say that more than bouncing back what we have, bouncing back to what we had, we must leap forward to a better future. And for me, public value will be the definitive leap enhancer, I would say. And for instance, in these elections, public value could have told us if people what would be their own priority, going to the polls to vote, or postponing the election and staying at home because they feel that staying at home would be the proper decision because they want to be safe. We decided without having all of that information. We decided that democracies should always stand, and I think that is a big challenge. And so, like I said, public value is not the smoking gun. It doesn't give you the answer to everything, but it gives you a sense of what is prioritized around you. The decision is up to those who study public value and those who try to understand those, I would say, indicators of our own community.
Thank you. Following up on this one.
Sorry,
Xiao, yeah, go ahead.
May I add just one small thing about this question? Because I totally agree with President Newton, but I also worked as a consultant for some politicians and some electoral campaigns, and I would just
not me. I have to say
no. And I would just like to to point out one small idea. In communication, we talked about storytelling. We talked about creating a good narrative so that many people can understand who we are as candidates and why they should vote for us. And I think here the connection with public value, and that's the small thing I would like to add, is that perhaps it helps us to clarify the basic needs from different communities. And I think that's the most important thing for politicians and for policymakers when we try to understand if we are going this way or the other way. We must understand what are the basic needs and also to conciliate these different interests. Understand what are the main values, as you said before. So I was just wanted to add this.
Thank you very much. It's a great add to the thing Louis already said. Louis, I come back to you. There's an interesting question from Bram, who asks, do public leaders have an obligation to steer what the public values? And does this field of research help in that? Or is public value more a tool in measuring what the public values?
Well, I would say that that is an interesting point of view and something really worth debating about. I mean, doing all of this, we're all thinking about, okay, what could public value mean to our own policy-making processes? And I would say that, again, public value is not the smoking gun. We shouldn't look to public value as saying, hey, listen, we all should steer our policy-making decisions and even our way of life in regard to what the indicators from public value tell us. And I would say that that is a little bit short on the greater objective. We cannot be undermined in any way. And I think that is the main difference that public value brings to us with one concept. It's not the concept of our lives, but it's a very important concept. I would say that policy making should again be addressing people's priorities. And I would say that the best way to understand people's priorities, from my point of view, is having the correct tools. Correct tools go from a lot of what public value stands for. When we developed the apps in Estrela, citizen engagement apps, we didn't know at the time that we were developing, that we were working on public value concepts. It's a part of what public value stands for, but it's not the whole. And I would say that we should never try to direct ourselves for the whole, but we should try to understand every aspect that we think could make a difference in terms of what affects our own decision and affects the quality of life of our communities.
Thank you. A question for Timo. Timo, the existence of a free and fair market is connected to the existence of democratic institutions. Do you think it is possible to create a concept of public value without a free market and without the protection of democratic liberties?
Yes.
Amen.
Clear, yes, of course, because history has shown. We have to go back to the 20th century and to see societal orders. And I'm talking to you as a German and being aware what I'm saying. I'm very much aware what I'm saying. It was only 12 years in a way, but those people in those times, they always articulate, didn't use the term, but they would argue with the common good. And it's of course possible. In the long run, all along, it will be hopefully destroyed and we will achieve democracy again. But there is reason why democracies are contested all over the world these days. We could say the world has never been as democratized as it is of today in the 20th century. We had a peak maybe, and what we currently experience that democracy is not failing, or we have this kind of only a little dip in our way to more democratic world order or democratic orders in different countries. But democracy is rather a new development. Don't get me wrong, but I would strongly argue that even monarchies are able to create public value in a way. If people appreciate what the emperor says, why not? We might question this with our heart of enlightenment and fueled with all the notions of modern democratic values. But historically speaking, every societal order rests upon certain trust people have in their governments, in their institutions. And as long as the institutions work, even in totalitarian system, this is the way of public value. To put it another way, public value is not a nice concept. Public value is not a sunshine concept. Public value is also when it rains. We might, of course, associate public value these days with democracy, but by no means we can simply say public value is always beautiful. It can be even insane. It can be pathological public value. There might be also a weapon for people who seduce and persuade others. And we have seen this in history many, many times. Therefore, the relationship between free markets and public value, I would question, at least qualifying to say, look at China. We wouldn't call this order a perfect democracy, but they are obviously able to create public value in a way. And this is the nasty question of all public value research, which actually keeps me awake at night, how to come to terms with this doing public value management in a responsible way. I said in my introduction, as a psychologist, I approach this topic and being aware that people are easily to be manipulated. Public value is also a very dangerous tool in the wrong hands of doing irresponsible things. But we should not be as naive to believe that free markets and public value go always hand in hand.
Thank you, Timo. I have a question, a sort of a remark from, let's see, from Chelsea. I'm not sure if I pronounced the name right, but it's about public value should not be treated like some kind of innovation. In fact, it's the basis. Let's forget for a moment the concepts, because what is important is the daily practice and the true democracy of and in the institutions. Louis, I would like to ask you to be the first one to reflect on this one.
Well, first and foremost, well, it's a 25-year-old or more innovation. So Mark and Timo have been around this subject for, I don't know, more than 20 years, which means that I would say that today, what it means is a way for democracies to create an agenda where people can present in a clear way what they feel it's their priority, and what they feel that their institutions and their democracies should react to first. And well, we'll never forget that daily practice. I was saying in my presentation that when I first met Timo, he told me, you're practicing the public value and you didn't realize it. And I was saying, I did what? And in fact, that's true. I mean, in Portugal, we didn't discuss public value. And as Professor João Simão just told us recently, that's something we have to introduce to our academies here. And that is the main challenge, I believe. It's in fact day-to-day decisions based, of course, on our best knowledge of our own community's priorities. And it's, of course, Timo just mentioned right now, it can be used to graver circumstances and to support, I would say, drastic and bad decisions. It could be, like he said, the best tools in the wrong hands, and that could be challenging. And I would say it could even, in some way, it could threaten democracy itself. And that's why we should, I would say that it's, of course, it's the basis of everything. I would be the first one to say that because, like Timo said, I was doing it and I didn't even realize it. So, yeah.
Garen, can I just say something about this?
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. Public value is the basic, of course. But if I'm not wrong, the question was talking about institutions, right? Let me just focus briefly in two different kinds of institutions. First of all, the organizations, profit organizations, right? And of course, we know that this is an approach that has roots in management, although management has been a little bit forgotten in this event. But it's also important to understand how public value can be addressed and approached to organizational management, because when we talk about organizations, when we talk about different companies, different enterprises, we know that they must have more concerns beyond their profit. And especially in communication, we try to work a lot with this area. I mean, so this is my business strategy, but what can I do and what can I communicate beyond this strategy? That's why in communication we give a lot of attention to organizations' identity, for instance. And I think this is sometimes without realizing, that's what President Newton was saying, sometimes we are promoting public value. Sometimes we are working with this concept not in mind, but in our actions. And this is why we need to open our eyes, sorry for the expression, to what is really public value and what is the importance. And on the other hand, when we talk about academia, when we talk about higher education and universities, I think this is about how to think about issues, and this should be the main objective of any university, and also to train how to better decide what's right and what's wrong. And this, of course, connects with what we will do as an organization. And this, of course, connects in the political sector. How can a decision maker make the best decisions for their constituencies?
Thank you, Xiao. I will now address some questions and remarks from Kate Clark. Thank you for that. I think it's very good remarks and questions. The first thing is that the definition of a space in which to understand what is important to people is really important. Often as policymakers, we assume we know what is important, and that is not always true. I think we're very recognizable. Also, unless policy starts from where people are and what is important to them, it will fail. I think a great comment, but at the beginning of the session, she had a great, I think it's an interesting question because it's more practical of use. She's asking, I'm currently developing transport policy where there are conflicts between equality and decarbonization. How can public value help with reconciling conflicts between different values? Timo, I think you are the person to address this one.
I mean, on the one hand, oftentimes also within the public value concept as we propose it in Leipzig with 4 or 5 dimensions, oftentimes values are not commensurable. They are competing and they can't be reconciled on the very same level. Only if we, at least I think, appeal to a different level beyond a certain value, in other words, justifying public transport solutions with the notion of common good because it's good for all, it kind of transcends the actual value conflict this would be one public value proposition I would suggest to write a speech or to argument in parliament or wherever to really appeal to the public interest, which of course politicians like to do. It's good for the country, it's good for the people, whoever the people is, in a way to appeal to a larger entity. But still, if the conflict is between two values, I would introduce more than those two dimensions, all the other ones. What is the aesthetical value, for example? What is the political value, the social value? So as to make different values talk to each other. And primarily, and Herman, I remember your own research, public value as a tool helps to cross bridges between different, let's say, parties, opinions, ideologies, because you have, as Professor Joao said, a common unifying language which by itself is only an achievement in times of particular interests of echo chambers and people sitting in their places, in their groups, to find a common denominator. This is a language game, of course, in the sense of Wittgenstein's Sprachspiel in a way. It's a narrative game, and therefore, next to introducing a different level, next to introducing different dimensions, I would suggest to kind of fostering this common language and being prepared that things can be seen differently. And still, in particular in public transport, public value is not a choice. Public value is not something you can leave at the table. It's something you are, as a politician, you are in a way even paid for, you are elected for, to serve the people beyond different stakeholder needs. And then it's a matter of negotiation, but still being aware that oftentimes values cannot be reconciled. It's naive to assume that we can overcome dilemma between moral values and political values. It's a brutal fact that oftentimes in life people have to confront different values. I'm not saying public value is a romantic concept to put the kind of flowers blossoming style of let's give our hands to each other and peace and love and everything. But still, public value unites and does not divide people. And this unifying language is also, I would argue, an achievement. And maybe we have this festival in Lisbon. It might remind us that when the great earthquake in, please correct me if it's wrong, it's 1755, really,
Exactly.
the whole European philosophy was earthquake in a way that people would think of this Theodicee problem, how the mighty God can do such cool things to us. Philosophers began to rethink what they thought about the role of God in our life. Maybe this crisis could also help us to educate ourselves to see the role of the primacy of the social, which is my current favorite idea, that public value reminds us that it's the primacy of the social, and this kind of connector function of the common language might be also be applied in the public transport issue.
Thank you very much, Timo. Hopefully for Kate this was helpful. Louis, I think it's a question for you. If you look in the actual situation we are living right now, the COVID-19 situation, do you think public value will gain more importance? And in what way do you think that will happen?
Yeah, like I said earlier, more relevant than bouncing back to what we had. I think we should thrive on a leap forward. And I strongly believe that addressing public value, first of all, understanding the concept and exploring the concept of public value, employing public value around us, could be a way to that leap forward, could be the leap forward enhancer, as I said earlier. We have to understand that things are dramatically shifting on a daily basis. Even with the idea, the concept of these vaccines that can allow us to withstand COVID-19 and do that leap forward, we've been watching around the world that things will not thrive the way they used to be. The world's economy, except for some Asian countries, is shattered, and people are living with, I would say, a lot of questions, a lot of doubts about their own futures, about their employment, about their homes, about their own health. And one's health is something that is basic to the human needs. And when we're just debating the basics, I would say that, well, for everyone that would be easier. You wouldn't need public value to say that everyone wants to be safe right now. That is their top priority. Companies producing health equipments and products are will definitely be on top of people's minds, on top of people's minds to buy those equipments, to buy those products, because people are nowadays putting their health in first. We were discussing, for instance, the going to the pools on Sunday here in Portugal. We don't know, and that's why I think that if we start debating about this, if we start developing the concept, if people get familiar with the concept itself and start theorizing about it, I think we can enlarge our communication in terms of understanding each other's and understanding one's needs. And I think that is the big change here. And so, yeah, more than ever, public value is something that we should we should put on the agenda, and it's something we should debate. And again, it's something that I think will be extremely relevant in terms of the leap forward that we have to make.
Thank you, Luis. One question from Veronica. I think it's an interesting one, and it's going back to something we discussed earlier. Is free market necessarily a public value indicator? A free-ish economy has taken us to believe in perpetual growth in a finite planet. I see a lot of thinking minds right now. Good question.
Very good question, but it's not hard to reply in 1 or 2 sentences. Because it's big questions. Interesting that Veronica didn't say, is it a precondition? She said it's an indicator. If you say it's the indicator as a result, definitely not. History has shown that free market in its freest form does not help us to obviously solve the planet's greatest challenges. We call this in Germany social market economy. There might be some other versions of what we call free market, but free market doesn't solve the problems we currently face. And to reconcile the capitalistic order with free competition, whatever that means, and responsibility for one finite planet is a challenge which parties take up and have their suggestions how to reconcile. You could say free market was able to come up with the vaccine, which is huge achievement in civilization to come up with such a short time frame where the free competition mechanisms did work. But this brings me back to my earlier point. Distribution of wealth is the next big challenge. Climate change is highly political. It's not just being good to environment. It's talking about which people benefit most, which classes benefit most, the poor and the rich. This distinction is something public value should help to address. So therefore, the connection between free market and public is very complex. But definitely, for me, public value is not an indicator for free market.
Thank you.
Herwin,
yes, of course.
Well, I'm still evolving in the public value concept with Professor Timo, but one could argue that, again, the question of the smoking gun, public value does not offer the solution. Public value offers us several aspects where we can, from where we can make our own decisions. And this is very important, even in this dilemma between decarbonization and allowing people to mass transportation. I would say, or in this last case, the case of the free market, the concept of the free market, I would strongly argue that public value doesn't offer or doesn't pretend to offer any solution. It wants to give you data, and that's why I think Professor Timo said it could be dangerous in the wrong hands, because it's a lot of information. It's correct information. It's accurate, I would say, more than correct. It's accurate information. And this could, if we discuss indicators, KPIs, for instance, one could also say that, well, you can do that every day. Yeah, but it's not the focus that we have with public value. And this is very important. It's very important for democracies, and it's very important for businesses, because it addresses specifically what people want, but it doesn't give you, and it doesn't say to you, listen, they want this. What it says is there are a lot of people that are saying this is relevant for them, and you have to make the decision. That's why Professor Zim also said that in the end, there's the politician, the politics decision, because in the end, you can have the adequate information and still make the wrong decisions, or at least other decisions that others would say, but that's not data that public value offers. Yeah, it's not probably the data it offers, but it doesn't offer the solution.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
I totally agree with this idea that the public value provides that data, but I think there's the key word here is awareness. And I think that's the main idea. I mean, we can see this approach, this public value approach, as something that can make us stop and think about what we are doing. And when we do that, we can understand what's at stake, for instance, in policymaking, and what's important for different people. As I said before, different interests, different opinions, different parties. And I think public value can also be a way to understand that there's more life outside our bubble, which means that sometimes it means that not only me or any decision maker, any policy maker have the right solution. We must provide information, and we must receive information to understand what's the essential solution for everyone who is involved with that issue.
Thank you, Cheryl, for this contribution. It's 15 minutes till 9 in the Netherlands, so I think it's 15 minutes to 8 in Lisbon right now, and I'm sure there are other time zones within the participants. One question till we go wrap this up. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. When we are talking about the festival, we are talking about connecting, contributing, and celebrating. Well, if you look at myself, I like to connect, I like to contribute, and I like to celebrate. So that those 3 C's are wonderful. But how do we look at the purpose of the festival? What do we want to achieve with it, and who is the audience who will join this the festival? I'm just throwing it in the group. So
who wants to start?
Well, I can start it. Let me just say something very important. The festival will be held in Portugal, will be held in Lisbon, and Lisbon is an amazing city. So please, you must all come to Lisbon, and of course to Universidade Católica. So besides this, as I think I said before, we are trying to make something a bit different than other academic conferences. And from my point of view, from Católica's point of view, we are open to listen and to learn new ideas, new results, new research tipping points. And that's, for me, it's the main issue. Because, and we've already said this 4 or 5 times. Public value is not, it's not a concept that is studied a lot in Portugal. And for me, for Católica, this festival, it's the open door to understand how this can be important, not only in our country, but only to contribute to new ideas. And that's why I said before that we want a Portuguese public value network. And I think this is the main reason about this festival. I think we are not only here to discuss why public value is important and what is public value. That was the main purpose of today's event. In our festival, we want to go a little bit further. We want to understand what different people from different academic fields, academic and not only academic, think and react and decide, bearing in mind this concept. That's why I think this festival will be very, very important.
Thank you, Shao. Timo, Louis, do you also want to reflect on this?
I mean, nothing to add what Professor João said. I can only confirm and emphasize. And bringing public value to Southern Europe, talking about the European notion of it, having examples from, let's say, from Japan, including Mark Moore's presentation, as he will join us to inspire each other, to learn from each other, and to strengthen the community. Because put it another way, in the academic discourse, public value is not mainstream. Not at all. It's still a young, fresh perspective, and getting to journals, getting papers submitted at conferences, we have to, I wouldn't say to fight, but at least to debate what's the difference to stakeholder management, to CSR, to SDGs, to reputation, on and on and on. And therefore this place and this event in Lisbon is also a way of strengthening each other's mindset in terms of exchange of ideas, but also help each other to find one's own place in this academic space, which is not an easy space to survive for doctoral students as well as for any researcher to get papers submitted, to write books and so on. Therefore, that also an underlying melody for this event in Lisbon for me is also to help strengthen this European community of academic research on public value.
Yeah, I would add that, well, the way it's designed, I mean, a lot of people ask me, festival, but festival, is that a conference? No, it's actually a celebration, and it's intended to be that way. We're very keen on bringing a lot of good examples of what has been achieved with public value around the world. We'll not be only discussing projects like the Public Value Atlas, but we will addressing the results that Public Value Atlas has achieved in several countries. Professor just remembered as the importance of what's been doing in Japan recently, and how they will share with us all of that knowledge and all of that feedback that the Public Value Atlas in Japan was able to deliver. And that is something that we should all think about. And public value is actually, public value is about thinking of not only concepts, but not only ideas, but as I've always said, of priorities. How do each one of us prioritize things in their own lives? And how does that impact each other and their own communities? How does that impact businesses? And how does that impact policy making? All of that and more, I think, we'll be able to discuss in I hope in July in Lisbon. I wouldn't see right now any other city in the world that we would be more adequate to have a public value festival just after this period that I think it's a dark period in Europe. And Professor Timo just remembered the 1755 earthquake we had in Lisbon, and how that impacted throughout Europe. And I would say that this is our fight back. We will be starting this fight back here in Lisbon after this pandemic and discussing something that is very important, and it will be something very relevant to the leap forward we all are eager to deliver.
Thank you very much, Luis, Timo, and Zhao. We're going to wrap things up. It's almost 9 o'clock. So we'd like to... sorry, it's almost 8 o'clock for you, Louis. But we're going to wrap things up. I would like to thank you, Timo, Louis, and Zhao, for your contributions. I would like to thank the attendees for their questions and for joining us in this on Facebook and on Zoom. Thank you very much. We have one thing from what I get from this session. I have 2 quotes. I think sustainability arrived, but public value is here to stay. I think that's a good one. I heard from I think it was Timo who said it, and the one Louis said, public value is not a smoking gun. I think that's something to keep thinking about. And as we are talking about keep thinking about, Kate Clark challenged us in a former session. And gave us a challenge to think about what can public value do for you, but foremost, what can you do for public value? I don't have the answer to that one, but I hope it's something on which we can...
So it's a very Kennedy-ish approach to public value.
Absolutely. I will also put it in the... I put this one in the...
Just say one last thing, Gerwin.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
I would like to thank Professor Timo first and foremost, because this has been quite a journey, and it's been, I don't know how many years I've been discussing with Professor Timo, and I've been learning a lot with Professor Timo. Most of what I've been trying to perfect here in terms of public service in my own borough is coming out of my discussions with Timo. How can we address more adequate what people want and what people define as a priority? He's not been giving me the solutions. He's not being mayor of Estrela Borough, but he's been I would say a teacher, and a very important one in telling me how to address adequately what are people's expectations and how to read them. And I think public value is all about that. I also would like to thank Professor João Simão. Católica has opened their arms to this event, and they have accepted us and all of the concept around public value. Professor João Simão has been an enthusiast since the first meeting we had, and he's been pushing forward the public value agenda in the academic medium here in Portugal. And I would say that this is very important. This partnership, it's very important, and that is something that we should always take. People tend to take for granted certain partnerships, but I would say that this is something that we should not take for granted, but should be very grateful for. And that was something I wouldn't like to end this first event without expressing to both to Professor Timo and to Professor João Simão.
Gary,
very
can
much.
I just say one last
Of
thing?
course, go ahead.
I like to...
And Harwin, I'm sorry, Professor, just Harwin, I will not see you in Barreiro.
Agreed on that one.
I just would like to thank President Newton, his kind words, and I've only been in this project, and Católica has only been in this project about a year ago, but we all know this has been a roller coaster with a pandemic in the middle. But I think Professor Timo a few minutes ago said one sentence, and I think it can be the motto for our second festival when we finish this one. And this is the sentence, and I think it's a brilliant sentence. It's public value. Public value is not only peace and love. And I think this is an idea that some people sometimes forget, because we only think that public value is an amazing thing and that will save the world. And sometimes we need to stop and look at the other way to understand that there's more life than we think sometimes, than we sometimes think about the definitions. So thank you, Professor Timo, and thank you, President Newton.
Thank you all. One person we will especially also like to thank is Liliana. She's not in, you can't see her, but behind the screen she's doing a lot of work on arranging this, and also making sure that we get the questions and are able, we ask the right questions. For now, I want to wrap things up. Say good night to everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy, and hopefully, well, we will meet in real life in Lisbon, not in Begijnhof, Louis, I understood. And hopefully till then.
I do like Begijnhof.
Yeah, okay.
And let me just say, if not in July, definitely in Catholic.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening, and well, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.